Let me welcome to the show Dr. Andre Brock. Welcome.
Hey, how are you?
Hey, how are you?
Thanks
That's
for
Drew
having me on.
McCaskill. Thanks for coming in and thanks for indulging me because, I troll Twitter in a good way for the guests. I follow Ree on Twitter, and so I was watching your movements and you're very irreverent. You have a great sense of humor and you have a dope
Thank
book
you.
about tech that's out. So I was like, can you come on and tell us what we're doing wrong? And I'm going to ask you the question I asked the brother that was on before. How does your work free us? How does it free us, Dr. Brock?
So this is a complicated question for me. So one of the reasons why I wrote the book is that I wanted to talk about Blackness in digital spaces, but offline too, as not just about resistance or oppression. Like I live with racism every day, but I don't eat it for breakfast. I'm not angry for breakfast. And so I wanted to talk about the nuance of being Black in the United States, but also in our own communities. And so in my book, which is Distributed Blackness, I talk about Black joy quite a bit, including the ratchet, but also Black respectability, because I think it's important that we understand our own movements online separate from what we're doing to try to get free.
So, Distributed Blackness, September 14th, you're doing something 12 to 1. Talk about
Yes,
that.
Georgia Tech is going to have me in twice actually this semester. September 14th for the library, and then September 21st for a brown bag. Um, there's so many things going on right now though. I can't even keep track of my calendar. But yeah, September 14th is the most recent one. If you go to library.georgiatech.edu, they have a sign up sheet if you're interested in coming through.
All right. And what will people get when they go there? What are you going to be delivering?
As usual, I mean, you see my Twitter profile, so you know that I'm irreverent. So one of the ways I talk about Black activism is arguing that we needed to have joy and community before we got to Black activism. And so in many of the ways, Twitter, particularly Black Twitter, embodies some of that joy. So I talk about the N-word Navy. I'm not sure if I can say that word on your show.
I don't want
Um,
you to, but
I will
explain what
not.
it is. Explain what it is.
So a couple of years ago, Yahoo Business published a tweet when 45 came into office, and they said they were supposed to be saying Trump is going to need a bigger Navy, but autocorrect
Oh,
corrected that word to the N word, and you know how right now the Republicans are talking about cancel culture and how all we do is get mad and protest and set things on fire. We could have set things on fire for that particular statement, but what we did instead was turn to laughter, laughter about Black parents, laughter about our celebrities. Uh, One of my favorite ones that is safe for work is Trump tells the N-word Navy that we're going to go to war on the Gulf Coast. And the N-word Navy says, well, who all going to be there? Right? Or do you have war gas money? Right? And so using the things that we could use to communicate with ourselves every day, right, as a way to show that we've been fighting for this country for a long time. We're not just going to fight for just because you say so, though. We always going to bring a question and attitude to why we need to sacrifice our bodies for this particular moment.
866-801-8255. So Doc, you can follow him at DOC Dre on the Twitters, and his handle right
Please.
now is Thought, THOT. That's that whole over there. Leader, LEEDURR. That shows you how irreverent he is, right? So,
I'm sorry.
so
I tried to explain that to my boss, and he is a medieval Germanic scholar. And he's like, "Do you pronounce that thoth? What does that mean?" I'm like, "No, that's not what that means." So you getting me in trouble, Dr. Hunter. I see how you
oh,
do.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't know.
It's all good.
I thought everyone knew what a thought was. But this is the thing. Like we have our own language that every time it bleeds into mainstream, I'm angry because somebody told. Like I'm like just like I just told just now by accident, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because
Mm-hmm.
somebody went over there and said, Massa, they over there planning. There's gonna be
Every
somebody that's
time
gonna
they
tell
singing
on
them
us.
songs,
They over
every
there.
time
You know
they,
what
it's
that really
always
means?
the Uncle Ruckus.
Yes, and how do we deal with Uncle Ruckus because or a Killmonger, somebody that's going to trip us on the way to freedom.
So when I came online, when I came onto the call earlier, you were talking about hoteps, and I find hoteps to be fascinating because I feel like there's a Black paranoid tradition that is as much a part of the Black community as our move towards the bourgeois or our move towards political freedom. And that Black paranoid tradition is our most blatant articulation of the way that the world treats us, right? And so right now they're not only doing respectability and how women should be more modest and do more gender roles, but they're also doing 5G and the coronavirus is the ways that the man is keeping us down. And while I pay attention to them, I don't make fun of them, because within everything that they come up with these fabulous claims, there's a grain of truth, right? So for social media, I always say, pay attention to what your people are saying, not just the people you aspire to be, like celebrities or entertainers, but the people who you're related to who come to the cookout talking about, man, I'm not taking that vaccine. You see what they did to us with the flu shot. I'm just going to take my zinc and my airborne, and I should be all right. Right. And so pay attention to all of it. All of it is equally important. It's just we need to set our filters in place so that we can understand how to move forward without being held back by older things or things which are just too far out the pale.
So, man, I talk a lot about the collective power that Black folks have in digital spaces, like the power we have to change narratives, stop categories, make movements happen, the whole 9 yards. Can you talk a little bit about what that looks like to you? How do you define sort of our power, or you think about our power in digital spaces, and what can we do that maybe we're not doing right now that could move the needle on some things?
I mean, it depends on what direction you move the needle in. So I'm reading this book called Sentient Flesh. And one of the claims that the author makes, his name is Ronald Judy, is that W.E.B. Du Bois, when he talked about the color line, was envisioning a type of modernist philosophy for Black people that had nothing to do with the traditional modernism that we are trapped in. Right. So it's not just about getting free or becoming more economically sufficient. We've seen where that's led with the Black bourgeoisie and the talented 10th, and that's not a way forward for everybody. And so what I see online is that we capture these spaces in our own image, however irreverent or necessarily unproductive it may be, because in many ways our excess of life is what enables us to succeed and even do more than succeed across the entire world. And so I always push back on folk who are like, well, how do we capture that? How do we make money off that? I'm like, making money ain't everything. It's a lot of things, but it ain't everything. At some point, you also have to leave space for the things that you do just to let your soul breathe, or that moment of laughter where you and your boys all scatter in different directions because something is really funny. Like, you don't have to move and laugh, right? Laughter would be more productive if you just sat there and laughed. Well, not with the COVID, but you understand. So that movement, that embodied cognition that I argue that we have, it's super important to me to emphasize that as well. To answer your question directly, though, one of the most important elements of any activism is information, right? And so a lot of people have finally caught on that the smartphone is the most dangerous weapon of mass destruction that has ever been introduced with the camera. And in many ways, we are now, and I'll quote Will Smith, we are now seeing racism where before it was only spoken about in hushed tones in enclaves of Black people. And so no matter how dangerous it's going to be, like Ramsey Orta and the young lady who filmed George Floyd being killed, no matter how dangerous it's going to end up being to you to film that, I feel like we should always be mindful that it is necessary for us to witness, not just physically, but digitally, witness the inequities levied upon us by the state. And that will continue to lead us down a path where eventually white America will again become so ashamed, like they did during the Civil Rights Movement, that they'll have to make some changes. We might get another Civil Rights Act.
Yeah,
maybe.
Doc, Andre Brock is here. It's fake, though. It's fake, you know, and as I'm listening to you, we were outraged with Rodney King, but that white people were able, so-called white people, melanemic people, were able to write that off as an anomaly, right? And I was just talking to a friend of mine the other day, and I said they were able to write that off as an anomaly, and as soon as Reginald Dennis got his ass whooped, they were like, oh, see, that's why, and they moved on. Rodney King bumped that, right? So for a minute, they clutched their pearls. George Floyd, oh, my God, I can't believe that happened. Oh, I'm going to take to the streets. And then Breonna Taylor happens. There's no foot on the gas. Ahmaud Arbery was in the mix of that. Now, this latest young man, 7 times in the back, oh, he had a knife. Oh, he was an abuser of women. He was a rapist. There's like all of this stuff as he was handcuffed to a bed, as he's paralyzed now. No thought for his humanity or his kid. I don't care what he did. He got shot in the back, and we watched that. That already within this span of time from George Floyd to now, they've already moved on. And so there's no sustained outrage on the part. That's why we can't focus on so-called white guilt or awakening white people, even though they're necessary for change, but they're necessary for change for themselves because Rome has fallen. And if they want to live in a country that is third world, let's leave the actual pejorative, how we think about third world, not the actual third world, Right. If you want to continue to live in a country that is so far behind the rest of the world that is not catching up because of your inability to have humanity, we're going to be okay. History tells me, because we've been here. We started this. We ain't going nowhere. When we stay remixing and moving, the fact that we can laugh through this, the fact that there's still inside jokes, the fact that there's a P-Valley on television right now tells me everything I need to know, Dr. Brock. That tells me everything.
I will say, and this I'm paraphrasing from Derek Bell, who wrote this really important book for critical race theory called Faces at the Bottom of the Well. And he likens the United States to a house built on sandstone. Sandstone is easily eroded by waves. So if you see like certain coasts where sandstone is the primary environment, you see the waves have eaten away at it. And he said, we are not going to see immediate transformation with the waves in which we cause America to constantly take assessment of its living up to its stated ideals versus its lived reality. We're not going to see anything immediate. But, and this is something that King and Abernathy said, if we get them on camera and we make them show themselves to the world, they are so invested in trying to hold up themselves as an image, well, at least until recently, as an image of a space for democracy, that they will give us something. They will take it back. And Dr. King said that in 1968. He wrote a whole article called Racism and the White Backlash. For every 2 steps we move forward, they drag us 1 back, right? But so they will take it back, but fighting for those continual forward steps is something we're going to have to do for decades, maybe even centuries. So I feel you. I feel it's not, I don't necessarily go as far as saying it's false, in part because I understand that social media makes things seem as if as soon as we turn around, something else has happened, particularly this year, right? But I will say the longer term effects. It took us 6 years to get from Ferguson to here. It took 20 years to get from Rodney King to Ferguson, right? We had Simi Valley. We had the Gina Six. I don't know if y'all remember them.
Yes.
In Gina, Louisiana,
yeah.
Right? And social media helped free those kids, right? And so we're seeing as we get more invested in social media and we use these tools that have been given to us that weren't meant for us to show the world how America acts out, we'll continue to make progress, but it'll be slow. It'll be halting. It'll go backwards sometimes, like these last 3 years, but it's there.
866-801-8255. We have Professor Dr. Andre Brock is in the building. You can follow him at DOCDRE on the Twitters. He's hilarious too. Thought leader that he is. We don't have ownership of any of that. Drew and I have talked a lot about Black Twitter, and the power of Black Twitter is probably the most powerful arm of Twitter. It makes Twitter everything, the memes, everything. No ownership, no market share. As we're watching billionaires become richer and richer and richer, we're not. And I don't care how many Reed Hastings donations come into our HBCUs and other places, it's not trickling down. Your thoughts on that?
So there are certain things based on modernity, which I talked about before, but also capitalism, which there will always be considerable barriers placed in our way for acquisition. And I'm thinking of the fact that we have Black billionaires that you can name and thousands of white billionaires who you'll never know the name of, right? And so it's always going to be a fraught path. That being said, the gains that we make for our children and our children's children are something that we can focus on now, not necessarily just in terms of economic access, but in terms of cultural access. So I would bring your attention to the ways that recent media has brought to light historical inequity. So I'm thinking of Watchmen, where they did the whole 1921 Tulsa massacre, or Lovecraft Country, which is going on right now, which equates racism with Gothic horror. And so we're seeing ourselves represented on screen in ways that are much more nuanced and much more attentive to the things that we've had to undergo in the past, right? And so from that perspective, even though I don't necessarily think media representation will get us there, I think that there are things that are happening now where we're being seen in a more nuanced, a more full light than we've ever been seen before. No more J.J. Walker, poor thing, right? Or the like, right? It's no more, not just buffoonery or Tyler Perry shows. It's also more sophisticated treatments. One of my favorite movies right now is Moonlight. More sophisticated treatments of the variety of Black experience and identity. And I really try to celebrate that as often as possible.
Episode 5 of Lovecraft Country is going to put a lot
ready.
of people on there. Have you seen it already? Episode 5?
I have not. I have not gotten that password from my family yet.
866-801-8255. Woo! Let me tell you, there's going to be a lot of discomfort, but it's important that we explore all aspects of us, even the uncomfortable, because I don't think we have the luxury to not bring the people who want to be there, no matter how they show up in the world. We don't have the luxury to sit anybody down because of our discomfort. And they have always told us, and even in that hotepery that you mentioned, you know, there's this strain of like it's almost like hyper masculinity, whatever that is, right? That has been ingrained in us, but is not true to who we are as people. Like the notions of masculine and feminine, all that has been taught to us in a very non-helpful way, non-community way, non-loving way, it's not good. Let me just say that.
It's crazy to me too. It's crazy to me too how we have been indoctrinated to literally bend over backwards to put ourselves into physical and mental pretzels to ensure white comfort, right? Think of all of the things that we do, even when we're getting paid to do a job that we do to make white people extra comfortable, right? That the tone policing, the wardrobe policing, the appearance policing, all of that. Even that's the small stuff, but all of the stuff that we have traditionally done to make white people comfortable. And to think of that, and you juxtapose that to what we need to do from a community standpoint, how uncomfortable we are in spaces for the benefit of white people's comfort, and not to allow some modicum of that same energy and just grace for other Black people if we're trying to move collectively, right? That part of it, that we wouldn't give up just a little bit of that discomfort to make sure that we're still engaging and bringing other Black people along is there's a disconnect, I'll say.
It's a lot, but I would also argue the Black bourgeoisie has also demanded that we be quiet. So President Obama just came on our Lord's Twitter the other day or in an interview and saying, well, we don't have to riot. The Democrats are saying, well, there are both sides need to stop being violent. I'm like, well, both sides ain't killing us. Like, that's not the way it works. The other thing I would say, too, is that we had Colin doing his very quiet civil peaceful demonstration for 3 years, and they were like, no, that's too much. So then we started setting stuff on fire.
Not we.
And I was
not we, Doc. We're not claiming that.
You're not claiming any of it?
No. No, I'm not claiming the AutoZone or the police station or the Wendy's in Atlanta, the police station in Minneapolis.
No. Antifa did all of those. I will agree with you on that. But that was
Antifa.
One of the
Wait a minute. Wait, Antifa. How you gonna slip that in? Doc, this guy, man. First of all, here's what we're gonna have to do, Andre Brock, because clearly you can parry with us any day. I want to come in and have a very irreverent roundtable discussion with you on all things Black. And we're going to get this Distributed Blackness, the book. We're going to check you out on the 14th. But I think you should come back before then. Let's have a conversation about things because you think differently. But I think, it's important that we delve into how we can suss this out and move forward and be free, completely free. That means even if, we don't like each other, we should still be able to work together if we're on the same page.
So I have something for you. I want to come back. I definitely want to come back and chop it up with y'all. For your listeners, I think this code is still active. If they want to get a discount on the book, order it directly from nyupress.org and use the code BROCK, BROCK 30, and they can get the book for 30% off. If they don't want to buy it, you can read it open access on the NYU Press website. And if you're a student or someone who just don't have no money, DM me on Twitter and I'll send you a PDF of it.
Look at that. You are.
I mean,
you
it's
are
informational activism, right?
I love it. I love it. I love it.